Señores y señoras, ¿cómo están? Muy buenas noches a todos. Estamos en una conferencia más del Noviembre Circular, un mes que hemos catalogado para poder desarrollar diversos temas en relación a la economía circular a nivel mundial. Como ustedes han visto, ya nos han acompañado varios ponentes de diferentes partes del mundo a contarnos sus experiencias, ¿no? Y esto se realiza por el auspicio de Fortalece Consultants y PROP y la Escuela Profesional Panamericana. Es importante resaltar, ¿no?, que el ponente que nos acompaña hoy, Peter Polanowski, el cual agradecemos desde ahora su participación, ¿no? Él habla en inglés y por lo tanto la conferencia va a ser en inglés, ¿no? Ya estamos grabando y después lo vamos a poder colocar en nuestras redes sociales y también en nuestra página de YouTube. Entonces, a partir de ahora va a ser en inglés y ya para la despedida hacemos el cierre en español. Ladies and gentlemen, very good evening. This is the night conference where they learn about the circular economy. Tonight we are the pleasures of introducing you Mr. Peter Polanowski, thanks for your contribution, Peter. The topic of the presentation is the Canadian Circular Economy Landscapes Overview of Company Initiative on Regulations. Peter Polanowski is an ESG advisor with the SLR Consulting, a global environmental consulting firm that focuses on making sustainability happen. Though his career in sustainable, Peter has led project ranking for policy and legislative development, vertical farming, tech feasibility, ecosystem service assessment and evaluation, projects management of renewable energy development initiative, and sustainable strategy for the Inuit and First National in Canada. At SLR, Peter focuses on clean economic research and ESG strategy development, helping organizations develop actionable sustainability strategies through the adoption of sustainability frameworks and sustainability standards, including GRE, ASB, and TCFD. In addition, Peter works across teams and clients, climate strategy development, circular economy solution, training workshop, valuation assessment, and research report. Peter, please, can you start with your presentation?
Muchas gracias. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
It's okay. It's okay.
Okay. Buenas noches a todos. Mucho gusto a todos. That's about all I know in Spanish. I'm going to try to speak slow today to make sure everyone understands. Hopefully next year I can try to do a presentation in Spanish, but for today you'll have to put up with my English. So again, thank you, Miguel, and thank you to Fortalece for inviting me here to speak today. My name is Peter Polanowski. As Miguel mentioned, I'm a sustainability advisor with SLR Consulting. My professional career spans across many different disciplines, starting out in education and training, environmental management planning, environmental policy and legislation, and most recently ESG and sustainability advisory services. I've worked with organizations of all sizes, from small businesses to large multinational companies, advising them on sustainable business strategies, ESG disclosures, supply chain engagement, and circular economy. I will say I am by no means an expert on the circular economy, like many or most of you. But maybe like some of you, I have become interested in the circular economy and have been privileged to be a part of some circular economy work. I think as a sustainability professional, it's mucho importante to have an understanding of circularity and how it can be applied to organizations to close the loop. And certainly, like we've all noticed, there's been a very big drive for circularity around the world, especially in the last few years. For the agenda today, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the main circular economy initiatives across Canada. I'm going to start telling you just a bit about what we do at SLR and some of our work around circularity, and then I will talk about some of the main government initiatives working to build knowledge, to build capacity, and research in the circular economy. I'll also give an overview of some of the other major organizations in Canada that are shaping the discussion around circular economy. And I'll give a summary of the Canadian Circular Economy Action Plan, and then as well as some of the main challenges and opportunities in Canada. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Zoom chat, and I will try my best to answer them at the end of the presentation. Okay? Vamos. So SLR Consulting, we provide global environmental and advisory solutions from a network of offices in Canada, in the United States, in Latin America, in the Asia Pacific region, as well as in Europe and Africa. We deliver advice and support on a wide range of strategic and project-specific issues to a diverse and growing base of businesses, as well as regulatory environment and government clients. And just in Canada, we have 18 offices with over 450 staff. Globally, we have a team of over 3,000 working out of 100 offices in 6 regions. And our slogan these days is making sustainability happen. And this is because sustainability is a global challenge that requires a multidisciplinary team of systems thinkers. And our multidisciplinary staff at SLR, combined with our one team culture, is able to operationalize sustainability strategies and solutions, no matter the organization, no matter the region or the size of your business. We specialize in many different sectors like the built environment, industry, infrastructure, mining and minerals, energy, power, and the renewable sectors. And we advise our clients on major projects with multidisciplinary teams that work under the guidance of senior SLR professionals. And for us to be true leaders at what we do, we continuously develop 5 areas of our business: our people, our clients, our culture, our business, and of course, our planet. And as part of our technical and advisory services, we offer a variety of circularity solutions, and that includes supply chain sustainability, product design, circular business models, and many other services. So feel free to check out our website for more information. I'm going to highlight a couple of circular economy projects that we've been involved in around the world. So the first one is a digital product passport. It's an essential tool for a circular economy revolution. The demand for natural resources in our supply chains or the manufacturing of new products is one of the main contributors of climate change. And so responsible sourcing, including certifiable social and environmental sustainability of raw materials along the supply chain, is going to be very important to ensure that product consumption across the world is not at the expense of human rights, the environment, and climate degradation. The Surpass Consortium is currently developing the landscape for the rollout of unified digital product passports in Europe. And what that is, it's a digital record of a product's unique identity. And another example is chemical recycling to encompass end-of-life plastics. So we worked with a European developer of a novel chemical plastics recycling process that was designed to process flexible and food contaminated plastics that would otherwise be thrown in the garbage. The process converts these end-of-life plastic feedstocks back into raw hydrocarbon materials, and then those materials are suitable as inputs for the production of new plastics. So those are just a couple of the many circularity projects that we've been involved with. Now I'll get into an overview of the organizations and initiatives to incorporate circular economy in Canada. So while Canada, we're known as leaders on many other environmental aspects, like environmental policy and regulation, as well as climate leadership, that hasn't really been the case with circularity. We haven't set a goal of having a completely circular economy by 2050, like the Netherlands, for example. Nor do we have a Circular Economy Act that's been in place for over 20 years, like Japan. But over the last 20 or so years, the circular economy has advanced in steps. And often it's been at the local or municipal levels. And those local initiatives are based on many unique market drivers, public interests, policy actions, and business models. The main sectors where circular economy initiatives have advanced in Canada have been in plastics, in the metals industry, minerals, forestry, agriculture, and textiles. But the momentum over the last few years has picked up. For example, the number of Canadian academic publications on circular economy has rapidly increased since 2015. And initially, a lot of those publications were focused on just waste reduction. But as we build national capacity, expertise is being developed in research and development as well. And the private sector is making a lot of progress on circularity initiatives, with several companies at various stages of research and development and circular practices across sectors, from oil and gas and mining to agriculture. So there's an opportunity for Canada to play a leading role in circularity, but we really need to act now and act in a coordinated fashion across industries and organizations. So the federal and provincial governments have a number of initiatives that promote circularity. For example, Canada's Climate Action Plan encourages industry to adopt resource-efficient approaches that promote circularity. The Government of Canada is also currently looking at ways to increase remanufacturing and other value retention processes, so like refurbishment, repair, and reuse, as a way to reduce environmental impacts of products while also providing socioeconomic benefits for Canadians. And they're in the planning stages of developing a national strategy to encourage remanufacturing and other value retention processes. There's also the Canadian Minerals and Metals Plan. And that plan was developed by federal and provincial governments, as well as industry stakeholders. And a key part of that plan is to incorporate circularity in mining and specifically focusing on upcycling mining waste. Oh, whoops, sorry about that. And then we also have the Canada-wide strategy and action plan on plastic waste. And that's also a multi-government, multi-stakeholder initiative that promotes circularity as a key driver towards zero plastic waste across the country. The plan identifies where changes are needed across the plastics life cycle to promote circularity. And it also sets out actions and timelines to implement a strategy on zero plastic waste. For example, the plan currently is aiming for a 50% reduction in plastic waste from a 2014 year baseline. And this isn't a full list of initiatives that are happening, but it covers some of the main activities that governments in Canada are doing. So extended producer responsibility, we know that it's important to advancing the circular economy in any jurisdiction, whether we're in Canada or Central and South America. And often it's a key first step from a policy standpoint or from a regulatory standpoint. We know that EPR systems, they promote innovation, operational efficiencies, and they help to increase the standard levels and access to raw materials. And as of November 2023, most provinces in Canada have, or they're in the processes of implementing extended producer responsibility schemes. So I've highlighted a few provinces here. The province of British Columbia, they were actually the first province in Canada to implement an EPR program in North America. And now the responsibility for reducing environmental impact and managing the products is extended across the whole life cycle. Quebec has also been a leader in this space. In Quebec, the program is administered through a private nonprofit organization that represents packaging manufacturers. And then finally this year, Ontario, which has the majority of Canada's population, living in it, it transitioned to 100% EPR system. And then there's other organizations apart from the government that are really driving pretty big change in circular economy initiatives and policies in Canada. One of them is called the Circular Economy Leadership Canada. It was launched in 2018. It was launched during the G7 Summit, Ocean Summit in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And it was founded by a network of private sector leaders, think tanks, as well as people from academia. And it really works to connect Canada's circular economy community, and it serves as a bridge to similar networks around the world. And it wants to champion, or it is championing, a national circular economy strategy and a coordinated innovation ecosystem. And it's also launched and supported new circular economy initiatives in Canada. So initiatives like the Canada Plastics Pact and the Circular Economy Innovation Network have all been led by this organization. Another big organization is the Circular Innovation Council. So it was actually first under the name of the Recycling Council of Ontario. It was established in 1978 and has since grown. And it also collaborates across industries, across supply and value chains to advance circular business models and products and services that deliver environmental, social, and economic values. The Circular Economy Innovation Network, it's another organization that was founded through the Circular Economy Leadership Canada. And it brings together, again, different stakeholders from across sectors in Canada, including businesses, academia, government, and nonprofit. organizations, and it integrates circular economy strategies into existing and new new supply chains. And it also supports industry with the development of new business models. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, there's a lot of momentum being built in circularity in Canada, and a lot of that is led by local initiatives or local regions and cities and towns. Over 80% of Canadians live in metropolitan areas, but their communities are often separated by really big distances because, well, I mean, if you've ever been to Canada, that's what Canada is like. And this work with different regions and municipalities and towns and cities, it's led by the Circular Cities and Regions Initiatives, or CCRI for short. This initiative was launched only a few years ago in 2021 with the goal to advance circular economy knowledge and capacity across Canada's communities. The initiative has been a really big success. Just even in their first year of operation, it already had 15 cities and regions that participated in a year-long program of building circular economy knowledge and capacity building. And 10 local municipalities participated this year. And there's just a few examples of these regions that I've highlighted here. So Peel region is just beside Toronto. Through those workshops, they identified the need for circular solutions and strategies related to their public procurement practices. In Quebec, 2 towns, Haute-Yamaska and Granby, Quebec, they realized they were actually really well positioned for upcycling products and waste generated from one local industrial manufacturer. And then they realized they could actually feed that as raw inputs to another industrial manufacturer in the region. And then Kelowna, BC, which is over here in the west, they're already through this initiative considering policy options to address embodied carbon in buildings. So those are just a few of the examples that have come out from the Circular Cities and Regions initiative. 2023 was a pretty big year. This year was a pretty big year for the circular economy in Canada. So one of the main things that happened was Canada's first ever Canadian Circular Economy Summit. It was hosted by Circular Economy Leadership Canada and the Circular Innovation Council. It brought together over 400 leaders in person from across different sectors and industries, as well as the public sector, to collaborate on efforts and activities and advance projects and investments, also to inform policies and develop an action plan to accelerate the implementation of the circular economy in support of Canada's climate change, biodiversity, and innovation agendas. Another key event this year was the publication of the Circular Economy Action Plan for Canada. This guide is meant to be open source, so easily accessible by anyone, any company or jurisdiction, with the goal of building a better understanding of the circular economy, which will help enable all stakeholders across Canada to participate in its implementation through supporting its priority actions. So those priority actions, there are 5 main actions that are identified here. So using information, leveraging data, information, and education as a foundation for success. Collaboration, establishing new partnerships and cultural connections to accelerate change. Innovation is a central part as well to stimulate circular innovation across industries, sectors, and supply chains. And then aligning policy and procurement as well as directing capital for circular economy as well. Now I'll touch on some circular economy challenges and opportunities in Canada. So another piece of work on circular economy in Canada released this year was, it was called Advancing a National Circular Economy Approach, Identifying Potential Models for Canada. It was a study that was done, again, by Circular Economy Leadership Canada in collaboration with the Smart Prosperity Institute, which is a think tank. The study found that any successful circular economy strategy for Canada must take into consideration the socioeconomic, the socio-political, and the socio-cultural realities of Canada. So for example, jurisdictional structure Canada, it has a complex division of powers and decision-making processes related to the management of natural resources and economic development. Some of those responsibilities fall on the provinces and territories. Some of those responsibilities fall on the federal government. Then there's, the challenge of geography. Canada has a pretty small population across a huge geographical area, and there's a lot of regional diversity. And Canada's rural, remote, and Indigenous communities are a key part of its economic and cultural identity. We're also an export-oriented natural resources-based economy, right? So our integration with global supply chains, as well as a heavy reliance on the US market, results in many different degrees of supply chain influence. And then finally, and very importantly, there's the cultural and reconciliation aspect. So Canada still has awareness and education, as well as behavioral and consumer culture barriers to the adoption of circular economy practices. A lot of capacity and knowledge sharing still has to happen. And Canada is also currently working to advance reconciliation with Canada's First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And so, largely due to those factors, some of the challenges are, for one, like I mentioned, gaps in knowledge and information and demand for circular products and solutions. We're a resource-based economy, very much relying on the linear model. So those knowledge gaps still have to be filled. There's also challenges with costs compared to the linear extraction and use of materials and natural resources, because we're a heavily dependent, we're a country that's very dependent on our natural resources sector. There's still a lot of policy and regulatory gaps to be addressed with regards to circularity. And there's a very siloed approach across sectors and not enough systems thinking or collaboration that really needs to happen to drive circularity across Canada. And then, following along with that, there's still a lot of circular innovation, technology, and infrastructure gaps that need to be addressed. So this is why we really need a coordinated effort across industries, across sectors and stakeholders. And if that happens, we do have, the potential benefits of raising awareness for and the profile of the circular economy and its opportunities. We also will be able to align policies and regulation with circular economy goals. We'll also be able to develop common terminologies for the circular economy across Canada. We'll be able to support collaboration between industries. And we'll also be able to increase investments into innovation and critical infrastructure, as well as aligning supply chains for secondary materials. And all of that will result in future-proofing the Canadian economy. Lastly, I wanted to touch on some opportunities for emissions reductions through the circular economy. So we know that 70% of global emissions are related to material use and handling. And specifically on material use, Canada has many sectoral opportunities to incorporate circular economy approaches that would serve to decrease greenhouse gas emissions. Some of these sectors are hard to abate sectors, and so that means that they're not easy to decarbonize, and that's where there is potential to decrease emissions from circularity practices. For example, in the metals sector, Canadian steel has a high recycling rate already, and it makes up a big portion of the value of Canada's mineral exports. For instance, even with high recycling rates, though, there's circularity opportunities in that industry, mainly due to the quality of the end product, as recycled steel can suffer from poor quality when care is not taken to adjust for contaminants. And then in the built environment, so the cement and construction industry, for example, we know it's a major source of emissions, but mostly those emissions come from embodied carbon. So the emissions that were generated to make those building materials that we use to build buildings. And in the plastics and petrotextile industries, it's no secret that current plastics recycling rates are still very low globally and in Canada to this day. Environment and Climate Change Canada did a study of plastic waste recently, and it stated that the Canadian plastics economy is mostly linear, with an estimated 9% of plastic waste recycled, 4% incinerated, and 86% landfilled, with 1% of that being leaked into the environment. The review of plastics in Canada recommended a number of different circularity measures, including a focus on extending the life of durable goods, for example, appliances, which contain some of the hardest to recycle plastics, by improving the levels of reuse, repair, and remanufacturing. So in summary, I'd like to say that the circular economy in Canada is building momentum. The pace is picking up. We're starting to see from extended producer responsibility regulations coming into force. There's policies, there's frameworks, there's strategies being released. So a lot is happening, but in order to maintain that momentum, we do need the right mix of policies, knowledge sharing, research and development, and national and international collaboration, so that we can continue to make Canada more circular. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Any questions?
Please. Thank you, Peter. Please, can you answer the chat in the chat?
Yes, so I will address those questions first. So Percy, sorry, we have a question. Do you see collaboration efforts from the private sector to support the implementation of circular economy in different industries? Or do you think it's still necessary to have strong policies to encourage, motivate the private sector to implement circularity? I think it's a mix of both. There's still, like I mentioned, a big policy gap, a big regulatory gap in circularity, but we are already seeing a lot of companies, regardless of those gaps, really leading the way, whether it's, in oil and gas, mining, as well as agribusiness, because they see the value of promoting circularity. So I think even in absence of policies, there is momentum being built in the private sector. And then the other question is, how do you solve the problem of construction and demolition waste, and what policies are implemented? I can't think of any policies off the top of my head, but I know there's a lot of discussions. There's a lot of discussion papers and research on that particular aspect of the built environment. I've been involved in some projects with the insurance industry in Canada, and you know, insurance companies, suppliers are increasingly being driven to be more sustainable, because what you're starting to see is a lot of larger organizations like national insurance companies need to report on their environmental, social, and governance impacts as part of their sustainability or ESG reporting. So that translates to, you know, down the upstream and downstream in the supply chain, where you're starting to see, for example, you know, companies that specialize in property restoration, they're being influenced as well. And there's a lot of talk and research into, you know, repair and replace models, but that whole supply chain and value chain and how you do that, you know, with large buildings and demolition and repair over replace, I don't think, you know, that's been established yet, but I do know that there's a lot of work in that area. Another question, so about the mining industry, are there any policies to reprocess tailings ponds? It's a really good question. So I know there's research. So I mentioned the Canadian Metals and Mining Plan that is looking at repurposing tailings ponds to extract you know, resources from those tailing ponds and upcycle those waste materials. I'm not sure of any policies, but I will do some more digging and get back to you on what I find.
Peter, one question, general. How circular is Canada? What is the process? Progress. What is the progress?
So in Canada, like I mentioned, still has a lot of work to do. The only jurisdiction with a circularity gap report in Canada is Quebec. And that report cites that Quebec is only about 3.5% circular. And that's in contrast with the global average, which is about 8.6%. And in addition, Canada still doesn't have a comprehensive process to track material flows like the European Union. And like compared to the European Union, it has lower rates of recycling. Only 9% of plastics in Canada are recycled on average, that's, you know, across Canada, compared to 33% in Europe. So again, I guess not very circular would be the short answer, but progress is being made.
It's okay. Thank you very much for your interesting presentation. Once again, we appreciate, Mr. Peter, your contribution to this network. I am also all participants. I see you in the next conference. Peter, we are in touch. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much for listening. And how do you say good night?
Good night.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches. There we go.
Okay. Have a good night, Peter. Thank you.
Take care.
Gonna stand by.